The views, information or opinions expressed during the Journey podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved and does not represent Wise Words Imaging or any other company. Wise Words Imaging is not responsible and does not verify for accuracy. Any of the information contained in the podcast series is available from the respective owner. Enjoy the show.
Joining us on the journey today is Paul Coia. Paul is, in my eyes, famous for one thing, and I'll get onto that in a short while. But he was born 19th of June, I won't say the year because I don't want to embarrass his age. He's Scottish, he was born in Glasgow. He's a presenter for television, continuity announcer, and his career originally began in the 1970s, so he is in his 20s, if anyone's asking, as a DJ. And from there, he found himself as an announcer in 1980. Hello, Paul.
Hi there, David. How are you doing? Hi.
I'm good. Now, I touched upon television presenter, continuity announcer, and I skipped a bit what I know you for. But what was you most famous for that most people remember for on the television iconic moment?
Was that when I took all my clothes off and bared my bottom to the camera?
That might have been one, but not that one.
I've no idea.
But then I can imagine that channel being, well,
do you know, it's amazing. You talk to people and they say, oh, you'll always be known for blah, blah. And I go, all right, thank you very much. And then somebody else will say, oh, I'll always remember you from blah, blah. And you go, yeah, thank you very much. Everybody seems to look at people's careers and remember something that really hit them at the time. And that's what they remember you for. So fortunately, I've been very lucky. I've done lots of different things. I suppose in Scotland, I'd be known more as a TV and radio presenter. In England, I'd be known as that, but also maybe for launching Channel 4. In parts of England, I'm known better as a radio presenter because I do a lot of that now. It just depends who you ask, I suppose.
And now, talking about Channel 4, I know I wasn't even born when Channel 4 started, but I just go back on the archives on YouTube and I just listen to that poignant moment when Channel 4 first started and your words. Just as what was the score? It's called Four Score, wasn't it?
Four Score, the music, yeah.
And he's now Lord Dundas, if I remember rightly.
David Dundas wrote it. Yeah. He'd come off the back of, he'd had a hit record not long before Channel 4 launched called Jeans On, which was played a lot and made it in the charts, still gets played on the radio today. And he was asked to pitch for the song along with various other people. And he came up with a very simple idea. If it's Channel 4, let's just have four notes. And the four notes were bum, 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 da-da-da, and a drum roll. And that was it. And then he expanded that out, into a longer 3.5 minute score and released it as a record. I've still got the record, actually. And on the back of that, I don't know whether it's a kind of urban legend or not, but on the back of those four notes, he apparently bought his house on the royalties of it.
And he still gets royalties now, apparently, I heard, from any time anyone plays it, not just by bum, 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 but just if he actually gets paid for it still, I heard.
Yeah, and quite right. I mean, every time a Beatles song's played, they get royalties. Every time, I don't know, any song is played, radio stations have got to pay, the PPL, Spotify have got to give them a royalty if it's streamed. So why shouldn't he get paid for it? Yeah. And Simon, the guy who wrote the theme from EastEnders, gets paid every time it's used. I'm sure whoever wrote the music for Coronation Street way back in the early 60s, their estate still gets paid. So I think it's quite right. He deserves it.
So the iconic moment, you was the first voice of Channel 4, but was you the voice of the trailers as well, up to the build-up of Channel 4? Because I was looking at trailers building up to the launch, and there was welcome to a new channel, and then it was like a space effect of Channel 4 logo zooming in space. Was that your voice as well?
Yeah, we all had to go at doing the trailers leading up to the launch. I remember we did an event which I voiced, which had, I don't know, maybe, and I'm trying to remember now, but maybe about 20 minutes, half an hour of video with my voice on it in a theatre. And I can't remember where it was the Drury Lane Theatre. And we invited all the press and various shareholders and people along. By shareholders, I mean the government, because Channel 4 is state owned. So we all gathered in this theatre, and Jeremy Isaacs, who was our boss at the time, he gave a speech, and then we played the trailers with all the snatches of programs. And then we were all introduced, myself and my three co-announcers, and all the presenters of Channel 4 News and various other things. And then it was back to work, straight back to base, and we made all the trails that went out on the opening night. And then they said to me, we would like you to be the first voice, which, I thought, are you mad? Are you bonkers? What, is everybody else tied up? They're not available? Are they too expensive? Anyway, I did do the opening night, and forever I'll be grateful for the fact that I did get the chance to do it, because it's not every day you get the chance to launch a new TV channel.
Yeah, totally. And Fourscore, incidentally, if I remember from my research, it never got fully played all together. It only got played like 2 or 3 times, the full length, if I remember rightly.
I couldn't tell you how often we played it. I know
but on launch night, obviously, it was promoting Channel 4, so it was natural. But I only heard it like twice or 3 times afterwards, and it wasn't.
Yeah, it could be. I honestly don't know. Certainly, as you say, we used it on the opening night, because after I'd said the opening words, we went into a montage of clips, which a guy called Tim, one of my colleagues, had put together. And we played the whole Fourscore through that, showing clips from upcoming programs. So it was definitely used then. Beyond that, I don't know. Maybe we used it after close down that night. I honestly can't remember.
But it was just iconic. It's iconic. Just watching the video as well as hearing your words to that and seeing the video. That's just so, like I said, it just brings shivers down my spine.
Oh, well, that's good. They got it right then. See, it's difficult for people to understand, but way back then, 1982, the UK only had 3 TV channels, which were BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV. Nothing else. No satellite, no cable, no Netflix, nothing. 3 channels. So to launch a 4th was a huge, huge deal. And I said to you earlier, it's not every day you get the chance to launch a new channel. I've actually launched 2 channels since, because in this multi-channel age with satellite and all the rest of it, channels pop up every day. And I've been the opening voice in another 3 channels since then.
Yeah, that's right.
But at that time, sorry?
1, 2, 3 channels I've got listed here.
Yeah. So, it's difficult to remember that back then, this was a huge deal. When we did the opening, the world's press were in the building. I'm not just talking about the Daily Express, Daily Mail, Daily Telegraph, Guardian, Observer, Mirror, whatever. I'm talking about the world's press. The New York Post was there. The Washington Post was there. And we were trying to get the station out with all these journalists all swanning around, going to the buffet, drinking champagne, as everyone was. But those of us who had to launch the station were downstairs stone cold sober, trying to get the thing out.
And you was one of the very first in-vision continuity announcers as well.
Yeah, that was a weird one, because I had come from Scotland, where I had done that. I had done continuity announcing. I'd been in Vision reading the news and doing continuity up for STV, thoroughly enjoyed it. But I joined on the understanding that I would be allowed to present programs as well. And somewhere along the line, we didn't. The presenters didn't get the chance to present anything other than we were allowed to do a show once a week called Preview, which was a look at upcoming highlights. And we took it in turns week about. So every 4 weeks, I got to do a 20-minute show. Well, I come from Scotland, where I was doing a weekly chat show of my own with my name on it, And so I thought, this wasn't part of the deal. I don't want to do continuity forever. I've done that. So that's why after we launched in the November, I only hung around for about 6 or 7 months and then I was off.
Yeah, you moved to the BBC again. And it says you went to, unusually for continuity of the time, Coia could also be seen in vision, usually before close down. And then you became a presenter of BBC One daytime show Pebble Mill at 1.
Well, actually, yes, I did, but not immediately. In the June, I think. So we launched Channel 4 in the November. In the June or the May or something like that of the following year, 1983, one of my fellow announcers, really lovely bloke called Keith, said to me, do you have an agent down here? And I said, no, my agent's up in Glasgow. And he said, well, that's no use down here. You need to get an agent. I know somebody who's really good. So he got me an introduction to this agent called Annie, who was, if you can imagine, Lady Penelope, but 20,000 times louder. That was Annie. And Annie was lovely and pink and fluffy and marshmallowy. And it was a bit ab fab. Everybody was, darling, oh, marvelous, super duper. Well, all I've done is knock the door. Yes, but you did it in a marvelous, super way. Oh, whoa, love. And she was great. She was lovely. And she said to me, right, so you want to get away from there. You want to get back to presenting programs. I have a sneaking feeling I can get you something. So she got me a job at BBC Pebble Mill at 1. At BBC Pebble Mill, the building, not doing Pebble Mill at 1, but doing a summer show, filling in for David Soul, who was well known at the time from Starsky and Hutch. And I don't know why, but he ended up as one of the presenters of this show with Sally James. And he wasn't coming back for whatever reason. So they wanted me to fill in and take David Soul's place. So I went to Birmingham for what I thought was 8 weeks. And I ended staying 3 years because they then offered me Pebble Mill at 1.
Yeah, and that is iconic as well because Pebble Mill doesn't exist now. It's the mailbox.
Yeah. The building's gone. Although there is a plaque. They built flats there, and I'm told there's a plaque on the building saying that this was the site of the original BBC Pebble Mill building. And I haven't, and obviously with COVID and stuff, I haven't been able to get near Birmingham, but I'd love to go up and see that one day because it was an amazing building. The stuff they churned out was just phenomenal.
And what was unique, I think, about Pebble Mill, it wasn't based in an actual studio, was it? It was in the literal reception of the main building.
The old reception, the original reception, that's right. And I can remember being at school and watching it and thinking, this is a really odd thing. You can see through the windows, you can see outside. This is bizarre. It's a reception area. And once Pebble Mill at 1 had taken off, I'm told, I was still at school, I don't know, they moved the reception area to a different part of the building. And that old reception or foyer became the studio. And when you think about it, it really, whoever had the idea, they were trailblazing. Anybody can take the honors or the kudos for starting something like This Morning with Richard and Judy. Well, This Morning was Pebble Mill at 1. This Morning was the same thing. You can see through the windows and, oh, there's outside. You can see people going past. And it was the same mix of cookery and interviews and money tips, whatever. So This Morning was Pebble Mill at 1. I take no credit for that because I joined towards the end of it. I had nothing to do with the program being as great as it was or groundbreaking. And now you have This Morning with Holly and Schofield. And yeah, great program. But it's still, you're looking through at the outside. So
even
I think
though it's a green screen, Ray, because they don't want to let on too much, do they? They say it's live behind them,
But originally, I mean, I have filled in on This Morning, and I have been there. And back then, before it moved to its new location, you were looking through the windows to the outside. We had people at Pebble Mill who, knowing that they could be seen in the background, used to turn up and do all this, well, hello, mama. I remember once there was, I think it was a greengrocer's, maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, they used to drive their van up and down for the whole 45 minutes we were on air, hoping that their logo would be seen. So it was great.
Subliminal advertising.
What's that? Sorry?
Subliminal advertising.
Yeah. And The downside was, of course, the public could just jump over the fence and run up and start doing this through the window. But that didn't happen very often with good security.
So do you think BBC One's One Show is taking ideas from that early outset of studios where you could see outside? Because I noticed in recent years, they've gone from the look they were to the look where they can see outside BBC on the ground floor.
Yeah. I mean,
now I've been to the BBC myself, and I know when you look in, it's not the same as you look out, but it's just that illusion.
Well, I do a lot of work. I present a lot of programs for BBC Radio London, and that is directly above the One Show studio. So as you come into the Peel wing on the ground floor, on the right is the door into the One Show studio. On the left is the lift that takes me up to the second floor right above it where I do my radio show. And when you look through the One Show window, that is genuinely the outside. It's the walk up into the front of BBC Television Centre in the centre of London. So what you can see across from it is there's a coffee shop there. You can see that. And there's an area outside they can cordon off, and if there's a band there, they can put the Kaiser Chiefs, for instance, they played out there for the show. But yeah, that's not to do the One Show down or This Morning down or anything. I have no axe to grind, but they got the idea from Pebble Mill, which again is nothing to do with me. It's whoever way back decided, because they wanted to save money, we can't build a studio, let's use the foyer and let's look outside. And so much telly has been influenced by that.
Yeah, I remember when I went to London just before I immigrated to America, because I had to go to London to do the paperwork and all. I went to the BBC studios and I was just amazed how much different had changed since I last went there. And, the way it was, Lenny Kravitz was playing that night.
Right.
So they had to cordon it off, and obviously they had to make sure it was safe for him to perform. But at the same time, which made me laugh, about 2 hours before he was due to perform, there was a protest outside. So it was lucky it was contained, that protest, at the time, because I was worried that protest could have been knock-on effect for the live performance.
Of course, yeah. Security has to be tight. If you walk in, every time I walk into the BBC Centre in London, I'm still a kid, because way over to the left of the reception, once you go in, there's a Dalek, there's a TARDIS, and it's a real Dalek. I wouldn't be surprised if it started moving and came after me. So I get so excited about things like that. I'm always a kid when I'm in there.
So you've done presenting, you've done continuity, you've now progressed from presenting, you've presented game shows as well. So would you say you're a game master of games in the time?
I've done game shows, I've done quizzes. I love doing them. The only thing I would say about doing quiz shows and game shows is that you have to be careful how many you do. At one point, I was doing a quiz show called Catchword for BBC Two Network. We were recording 9 shows a day, 3 in the afternoon, 3 over tea time, and 3 in the evening. Now, I was also at the time doing the breakfast show for a local radio station, and I was doing the lunchtime network show Garden Party for BBC One, which was going out to the whole of the UK. So after 6 weeks of doing that, I'm not saying I collapsed, but I was just so lacking in energy. I did a game show for Sky. We recorded it in the Granada studios. And I can't remember how many of those we did a day, but it was relentless. We recorded 3 series back to back. And at the end of that, I was just shot. It wasn't a question of having a holiday. It was a question of just sitting for 2 days in the dark. Because, people might think, oh, come on, the job's easy. And I'm not saying it's a difficult one at all. But it is a tiring one, because as the presenter, let me give you an example with the Sky one. You go into the studio and you're given questions for that program, and you're introduced to the 3 contestants. You say hi and you find out a bit about them, so you know what to talk about at the beginning of the show. Then they say, right, we're starting, 3, 2, 1, go. The music hits and you walk in and you do it. No auto cue, and you do the bit, and you're thinking, oh, hang on a minute, what did I say to introduce the last show half an hour ago? I better make this different. And then you introduce the contestants, you read the questions, and in your ear all the time you're getting a countdown to the end of the show, and you have to finish to the second. So you finish, they go, right, that's clear, thank you. You then have to look at the camera and do a trailer for the show saying, join us next on Sky when Mary, Susan, and Alf will be going for the big prize, blah, blah, blah. That's right here on Sky One after this. Yep, that's fine. Off you go. You've got 10 minutes to then run back to your dressing room, get changed, get your new questions, read through them so you know what you're doing, come out, meet the new contestants, find out about them, and right on that clock hitting the 10 minutes, the music goes and you're back out. No auto cue, and you're introducing the show thinking again, how did I introduce it the last time and the time before? So it is tiring. I'm not pleading that it's as difficult as, going, I don't know, digging roads or something like that, but it's exhausting. So you've got to be careful how much you commit to these things.
Because I know my time as a radio presenter, because I did volunteering as a radio presenter back in the day, you had to keep to the timing for the news because there was no way of avoiding the news. You had to build it to the right time. You had to make sure, in this case, commercials were played at the right time to make sure there was, and at times you often think, am I getting it right? Am I getting right? Have I got the show right by preparing? And it got frustrating, but I got through it. But it's just knowing the timing was the key factor.
Exactly. I do a radio show every Sunday for the BBC, BBC Radio Berkshire. And every hour coming up to the news, I've got to make sure that I'm on time to play the jingle with 17 seconds to go to the top of the hour. It used to be because you had to hit the pips at the BBC because they come in right on time. We don't do the pips anymore. But what if you're doing an interview with somebody and you're chatting away and you think, oh, flip, right, I've got 7 seconds left, then I've got to start this record, which will then finish, and then I'll hit the jingle, and everything's back timed. And what if you get to 5 seconds to go and you're about to say, David, thank you very much indeed. And then you're going to play your record. And you get as far as David, and then David says, oh, another thing I didn't tell you about, blah, blah. And you think, oh, my God. So it can be stressful, but it's a lot of fun, a hell of a lot of fun.
So talking about the records behind you, there are a lot of gold ones or silver ones I can't tell on the camera. What are they for?
Well, if you don't mind me getting up a bit, hold on a sec. Through that door there is my studio. Hang on a sec. So there are a lot more in there, as you can see.
Yeah.
In my little studio. And so I'm very lucky. What happens is, so those two you were talking about, the bottom one is a gold disc signed by Eric Clapton. The one above it isn't signed, but it's from the Eurythmics. And in my studio, there's loads of stuff signed by, the Rolling Stones, Diana Ross. In fact, I'll go and get, there's one, hang on a sec. So something like this, if you have helped an artist, as far as the record company is concerned or the artist is concerned, by playing their song on the radio, if it goes gold, silver, platinum, they'll want to say a thank you and they give you these discs. So this one is from Diana Ross. Now, this one, I didn't actually, I guess I played it on the radio, but I didn't have any influence on it becoming a hit. But the reason she sent me this was because it was for my 40th birthday, which was a really lovely gesture.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky. Yeah, record companies and artists, excuse me, have been great. And so I've got them plastered all over my walls. But also, I've got a couple of things that I bid for in an auction simply because I'm a huge fan. So I've got a signed disc from Marvin Gaye to his fan club. He was giving it away in the 60s or 70s as a prize. And I've ended up with it with a letter of authentication from the head of the fan club at the time. And I've got a signed menu from Linda McCartney launching her vegetarian menu at the Hard Rock Cafe. So that menu is signed by Linda McCartney and Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr and various other stars. And that's just memorabilia for me. But for those two things, it's just because I was such a big fan that I actually bid in an online auction for them.
So who is your biggest influences when you was growing up?
Well, biggest influence on my life, my mum and dad, obviously. I was, in terms of my career, I was very lucky in that my dad worked in TV. So ever since I was a kid, my earliest memories include going to the Christmas parties at Scottish Television and, you know, seeing all the stars there because they would bring their kids to the Christmas party. So I was around telly all my life, literally all my life, because my dad was working in TV before I was even born. So I guess in telly, my dad worked in, he eventually rose through the ranks from being a lighting director and became a member of the executive board at STV. And he was responsible for hiring everything from cameramen to graphics people to outside broadcast people. He looked after all that technical side. So he was a different side. He wasn't front of camera, and he thought everybody who was in front of camera was a narcissist and just basically wanted to look in the mirror all day. And I'm not saying he's wrong. I think you have got to have a big head to do it. A big head.
And that is how it is in today's filming of cameras. You know, you got the camera in front of you, but you also got monitor next to it, so you can see yourself pretty much.
Yeah.
So it is a mirror.
There's a downside to that, though. You know, when you go in and you think you've had your shower, you've combed your hair, the wardrobe people have given you a nice suit or whatever, you think, oh, all right, I look presentable. What happens when you turn up for work and you've still got to do it and you've got a great big spot on the end of your nose or your eyes watering or, you know, you've got toothache and it's all slobbering down the side of your chin? You still got to go on and do it. So there's upsides and there's downsides.
Yeah, so if you was to tell someone about joining media as a whole, what would you suggest to them to do to follow their aspiration? What would you tell them?
Well, it depends what they want to do. I mean, the media is a big, big industry. Do you want to be a presenter? Do you want to be a researcher? Do you want to be a director or a producer? What exactly do you want to do? And telly has changed since the days that we were talking about. Quite a few of producers of my radio shows have left the BBC now, and they've all got one thing in common. They've been very, very good, and they've left to do podcasts. One of my producers left to head up podcasts for Which Magazine. Another one's doing them for the Daily Telegraph. Another one's doing them for Formula One. So it's strange, the media now, because there's more media than ever, but there's less money around. If you're involved in drama, Netflix has been a wonderful thing, and there's more money around to make drama. If you're involved in anything else, very difficult to know. Well, as with any job, the only advice I would give is you've got to have tenacity. You've got to take the knocks. You've got to pick yourself up. When people say no to me, I mean, one of the things I do now is I coach all around the world, well, pre-COVID, and hopefully we'll get back to that. I coach directors of companies on how to use the media, appear in interviews, announce their annual results to journalists, or maybe just present at conferences. And so I still have to hear the word no when I'm chasing business. If I'm approaching a client and saying, do you want me to help with this? And they say no. And it's the same advice, which is when you hear the word no, you've got to change the way you hear it. I don't hear no as no anymore in business. I hear no as not yet, because you don't know. There could be 101 reasons why you're not suitable for what's going on at the moment. If you're a student who wants to become a researcher in telly and you apply and they say no, doesn't mean you're rotten. It means they might not have a budget. It might mean that somebody with more experience has been given the job because of you. There could be 101,000 reasons. if you really want to get into the media, just hear no as not yet. Pick yourself up and go again.
And you started off in hospital radio, and like I said, I've done community radio. So would you say the basis to start in somewhere small like that and see how you go from there?
Well, it certainly worked for me, not just for me, but when I joined hospital radio, the guy who was just leaving hospital radio, he was older than I am, and he was seen as the star of hospital radio in Glasgow. He was off to the BBC. It was a guy called Ken Bruce, who has just won the title of most popular radio presenter in Britain. Presents the morning show on Radio 2, and he's got the highest ratings. He started in hospital radio Glasgow. He was leaving, I joined. Joining me at the same time was a guy called Ross King, who's now in Los Angeles and does all the showbiz reporting for the Lorraine Show and ITV's Breakfast Show. Another guy there who taught me how to work the desk and showed me the ropes was a guy called Charles Nove. He now presents the Breakfast Show on Scala Radio. So there were loads of folk there that I, could look up to and learn from. So if you want to learn the ropes, hospital radio is wonderful, but don't get cocky. I mean, don't assume that they're sitting there waiting for you and begging for you to join. They've got very high standards too, and you've got to know what you're doing, and you've got to be committed to get in there. Don't think it's just a given that you'll get in because you don't get paid. Same with community radio. A lot of people think, I'll just go and do a community radio show. They'll want me because they're not going to pay me. Well, no, they've got standards. They want something good. Certainly go. As Ross, I eventually from hospital radio started sending demos in to Radio Clyde, the commercial radio station in Glasgow. And eventually I got a through the night gig after lots of knockbacks. Again, not no, but not yet. Ross King, on the other hand, he applied to Radio Clyde to be a Saturday boy. And he used to run errands and make coffees on the sports show. There are lots of different ways, but you've just got to swallow your pride and realize that you've got a lot to learn.
Yeah, because I learned that myself. I was a presenter, and because I chose to go away for a couple of years, I lost that right to be a presenter.
Yeah.
But I never lost the respect of them. I was still a broadcast assistant, but I always wanted to be a presenter. But they said, you being a broadcast assistant is better than being a presenter, because that's what helps the show more.
Yeah, I think once a presenter, always a presenter. I think it gets into your blood. I think when you've been away from it for too long, you start to think, oh, I want to get back to this. If I've had to give up radio because I'm involved in other things, or telly because I'm involved in other things or whatever, or even now my executive coaching, if I have to give that up for a period of time because I'm involved in other things, I do really want to get back to it, because at the end of the day, it's all about communicating with other people. And I think if you've got that need in you to communicate, if you want to communicate with people, it never leaves you.
That's why I'm doing the podcast, because this is me doing what I feel strong in.
Of course,
doing.
yeah.
And me not being part of a radio station for so many years. Don't get me wrong, I still do remote work from America, and I send it in. But that's me editing. That's not me behind a mic. This is so when I do a podcast like this one for YouTube or for my actual podcast, it's me reaching out to people just to help people and help inspire people. And that's what I think you as a person have done over the years. You've inspired people to be better for what they are, and you've taught people to be mini yous, but you've told them to be. But at the same time, as I learned in radio, you can't be like the same person. You can teach them to be unique, but you try and mold them into the way you would want them to be.
Well, if anybody said to me as a presenter, what's your tip for how I present myself? I would say to you, be yourself. Don't be somebody else, but turn it up 20%, because there's a microphone there and there are cables and there's a transmitter and it's got to find its way to whoever. And if you just sat there and, we're just yourself when you're ordering your groceries online or something like that, nobody wants to hear that. They want you to be more enthused. So turn the enthusiasm up 20%, but be yourself. And I get loads and loads and loads of people getting in touch with me. Will you listen to my demo reel? How can I get into radio? And I had one guy recently, I say recently, it went on for months and months and months over the past year. And he kept sending these demos. And I said to him, you're pretending to be a DJ. You're not communicating. You're doing that for yourself. Well, what do you mean? I said, well, all this, oh, here we are, a marvelous big hit. Yeah, great, top of the hour, coming at you one time in the chart, blah, blah, blah. I said, you might do that in a club or something, but you don't do that in the radio. That's not, you talk, you are yourself. Do you go to Tesco and order your groceries and say, I'd like a pound of bananas, and not half could I have a, no, you don't, so be yourself. So this went on for months, and he scaled it back, and he became himself. And I thought, that's terrific. And then he said, I'm going to take it up a notch. And he went right back to where he was. And he was awful. And I said, look, if you're not going to listen, this is a waste of time. Yeah. So he sent it to a radio station. And the guy sent him back the feedback. You are pretending to be a presenter. You're not being yourself. Exactly what I'd said to him. For goodness sake, pretend you're doing a podcast, not the radio, if it gets you out of being a club DJ. But communicate. So I thought that was fair enough. And I thought, well played to the program director who took time to give him the feedback. But no, this guy got straight back to me and said, well, what do you think he means by that? Who's he anyway? And I said, who's he? Well, he's won awards for broadcasting. He's the program controller. He can decide if you get a job or not. Suck it up. Maybe what he's saying and what I'm saying is true. So you can either come across these people who don't want to listen, or you get people, marvelous, wonderful people who do want to listen. And the only advice is be yourself.
Yeah.
Don't try and show off. Just communicate as yourself, but dial it up a wee bit.
Now, there was a famous actress who was a community radio presenter where I was as well. She's called Pat Creel. I don't know if you heard of her.
No.
Well, she was very well known in the 80s for On the Birth and such shows like that. And she said to me, just think as if you're having a chat next to someone on the sofa. Don't feel like you're shouting at them. Just imagine they're on your sofa next to you and you're having company with them.
Yeah. Well, Terry Wogan said two things to me, God rest him. Terry Wogan said that when he broadcasts, he imagines talking to one person, not 8 or 9 million. Because how can you talk to 8 or 9 million people if you thought about it? They're all different. They have different experiences, different backgrounds, different wants, different needs, different desires. If you were trying to second guess all that, it would be hopeless. So you pick one person and you address them, whoever that might be in your imagination. And the other piece of advice he gave me was, he said, at the end of the day, young Paul, remember, it's all bollocks anyway. That's great advice. It is.
And I can imagine him saying that.
It's so unimportant. You can get tied up in all the showbiz and all the nonsense of it. But as Terry said, at the end of the day, it's all bollocks.
So, a couple other things. You had your own chat show, Meet Paul Coia. What was your memory so far?
Well, before I even came to London, I had Meet Paul Coia. And then after that, when I went back up to Scotland to do more of them, it became the Paul Coia show, or It's Paul Coia, or something like that. I can't remember. So we did quite a few series. But the one I did before I moved to London, called Meet Paul Coia, I was actually in Los Angeles when the first one went out. And we'd recorded the series before I went on holiday with some mates. And I got this feedback that, oh dear, it's a disaster. It's terrible. I was going, oh, what's wrong? Anyway, they had put out the wrong show in that, the pictures were the same, but the sound, they'd forgotten to fade up the applause and they'd forgotten to put the audience laughing and all this sort of stuff. So it was just dreadful. And you couldn't hear me and you couldn't hear the guest. I don't know how it happened. And there was a review in the Daily Record newspaper by a guy called John Miller. And I'll never forget it. It just said, Meet Paul Coia. And underneath his review was, no thanks. So That's fair enough. That's fair play.
Imagine if they did that about Jeremy Kyle now.
When the review is shorter than the name of the program, you know you're in trouble. But the chat shows were great. I love them. I love meeting people. So why would I not enjoy doing a chat show? I really love, you meet the good, the bad, and the ugly. You meet great people. You meet horrible people. You meet your idols. You meet up and comings who become huge after you've interviewed them. Who wouldn't want to earn a living?
So would you say that is how the radio is now for you? When you do your radio show, you're talking to people, you're meeting up and coming people, you're doing what you did, like you did for the chat show.
Exactly. Yeah. And also you can indulge yourself a wee bit, so long as at the, right at the forefront of your mind is what's in this for the audience. It's not what's in it for you as the presenter, it's what's in this for the audience. But I remember my Sunday show immediately before Christmas, I thought, no, in fact, 2 Sundays before Christmas, I did a chat with people who had new Christmas songs out. So I chatted with Beverly Knight, Susie Quattro, and a couple of others. And then I thought, well, hang on a minute. For next Sunday, I'm sure people would like to have a chat with the classic Christmas hit makers. So I phoned up Midge Ure and got him to come on and talk about Band-Aid. I got Shakin' Stevens to come on and talk about his big Christmas song. I got Dave Hill from Slade to come on and talk about Merry Christmas, everybody. And I got tracked down, and he's very elusive, but I persevered and I really, really went for it. I got Jonah Louie, Don't Stop the Cavalry. I got him on. It's the first interview he'd done in, 10 or 12 years. And he came on and spoke about that. Now, that hour for me went like that, because these were people that when I was a kid, I really thought were stars and looked up to. But the music still lasts. It wasn't me going way into the past and saying, hey, people, you've got to listen to this. These songs are getting played today anyway. So for the audience, there was a lot in it. So you can have a lot of fun, so long as your one question that you can answer is, what's in this for the audience? And if the answer is nothing, don't do
it. Totally. Paul, it's been a privilege talking to you.
And pleasure's been mine.
And I'm not going to ask you to say the iconic words when you first opened Channel 4, because I've heard that so many times.
One final thing on those words, right? I've still got the script from that night, and we typed up, good afternoon, it's a pleasure at last to be able to say to you, welcome to Channel 4. And I've still got where my boss scored out the words at last. So what I actually say is, good afternoon, it's a pleasure to be able to say, welcome to Channel 4. Because she thought that saying at last meant that we had, taken too long to get on air or something like that. And they wouldn't let me say it live. They made me record it earlier in the day in case I stuttered and stumbled over it. And I totally get that. You don't want to tune in to a new TV station and hear somebody going, good afternoon, it's a pleasure to be able to do that. So I totally get it. But I wish I could have done it live.
And then introducing the late Richard Whiteley and Countdown.
A star. Well, you see, we hadn't seen that program because it'd been sent back for editing so much. First time I saw it was when I introduced it. And Richard Whiteley had a very distinctive style. And we became great buddies. And when I did my last ever Catchword quiz show for BBC Two, I did 8 series of that, 8 years worth, which was a lot. And on the very last day, I was waiting backstage and the floor manager said, ladies and gentlemen, the #1 quiz presenter of daytime television, the man that you've all come to know and love. And I'm thinking, wow, he's really going over the top introducing me today. He said, ladies and gentlemen, Richard Whiteley. And I thought, yeah, right. So I walk out and there's Richard Whiteley. He'd flown up for my last show to Glasgow to sit in the chair and just do it for the sake of being there and saying, well done, which was lovely. We went out in the town that night. We had dinner in Leeds after that. And he was a sex symbol. You could not sit at a table and have dinner in a restaurant with Richard Whiteley and expect to be left alone. Constantly, women were coming up and asking. He was a star, huge star.
So he lived up to being twice nightly whiteley.
Yeah, well, Rich. Oh no, I've no way of knowing. I don't know. He was a ladies' man, but I've no way of knowing.
No, but I know in later years, his ties, his charisma was just what made him in. That's how I respect about it.
The women just adored him, absolutely adored him, and I came to really love the bloke. He was a great guy.
Paul, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you for your time, David.
Thank you.
The Journey.